Hey everybody. Well, we've got another fire boss down. And now this isn't a recent crash. This actually happened back in October of 2024, but the final report is out. And what brought this pilot to grief is something that could happen to any of us. It sort of happened to me a long time ago, but I think it's worth discussing, and I think we can all learn something from it. My name is Kerry McCauley, and welcome to my channel. So, like I mentioned, this happened last October in 2024, and it's a fire boss, just like the plane that crashed off the coast of St. John's a month and a half or so ago. And the fire boss, as you remember, is a firefighting platform, single engine, low wing turbine. It's a version of the air tractor, and it's very, very good airplane, very powerful engine. Does a really good job of fighting fires. Single engine, or I should say, single pilot operation, which is kind of nice. It saves on crew, and it's very versatile, easy to deploy. And this happened, like I said, in southwestern Minnesota. They were doing some training, and I'll read what happened, and then we can see what we can learn from it. So the pilot of the amphibious firefighting airplane departed from a land-based airport with a hard surface runway. Basically, this plane is an amphib. It has wheels as well as floats. He was using the wheels to take off from a paved runway. The pilot reported that he was distracted during the initial climb out by another airplane flying towards him on what looked like a low approach. Distractions. Bad on takeoff. According to the pilot, this disrupted his call-out flow, and he did not retract the landing gear. The flight was part of a training event, and the pilot was supposed to scoop water at the lake northwest of the scene of the mock fire. When he arrived at the intended lake, another firefighting airplane had just scooped water and advised him to use the south to north scoop line. The pilot stated that he did his pre-scoop checklist, putting his hand on the landing gear lever and verbalizing, "Hand forward, 4 blue for the water." I'm assuming that on the instrument panel that you get 4 blue lights if the plane is configured for water landing. That means the wheels are retracted and you get blue lights, blue for water, and the handle is forward. Or you bring the handle backwards and you probably get 4 green for land with the wheels down. As he was watching the other airplane, he said it did not register that the landing gear lever was aft and not forward, or that there were 4 green lights instead of 4 blue. Basically, he didn't look. When the airplane landed, it decelerated quickly, I'll bet, and nosed over before settling upright, which resulted in substantial damage to the wings. The pilot egressed the airplane without incident and saw the floats had separated from the airplane and the landing gear was extended. That's a oh-do moment. The pilot reported there were no pre-accident mechanical failures or malfunctions of the airplane that would have precluded normal operation. Yeah, landing an amphib with the wheels extended is usually considered bad form. And if you want to know what it looks like, I found a video here of it's probably a 206 or something like that, landing with its landing gear extended, and, well, you'll see what happens. Yeah, that's bad. They immediately know it's over. Happens every time. And this happens way more often than you would think. I mean, you would think that float plane pilots would be so paranoid if they're flying amphibs to double, triple, quadruple check that their landing gear is in the right configuration. Last year when I was at Oshkosh, a 206 came in with its landing gear retracted, and the pilot scraped on, came in and landed on the yellow dot and scraped up the floats pretty bad, and decided not to go around. He felt the scrape, and I think he even said that he was considered going around, which I think might have been an okay idea if you just scrape it a bit and you still have flying speed and lots of runway at Oshkosh. But he elected to just let it slow down and grind big holes in his floats. But it happens. And there's two different ways that this can happen. Number one, just plain forget. You're coming in, you're distracted on your landing call or your landing flow. You didn't use your checklist. You just forgot to put the gear down or up in this case. But that's not what happened to this guy. He didn't forget, he says. He said, put his hand on the lever and verbalized what he's supposed to do, 4 blue for the water, but he wasn't looking at it. He's looking at this other plane. That's when he took off. He basically was looking at his landing setup. Here's where I'm gonna scoop. Got the plane configured, but he didn't actually do it. And I sympathize with this guy because I did sort of the same thing almost 40 years ago when I was getting my multi-engine rating. I was working with a CFI. We were doing single engine operations, and he configured the plane to simulate a loss of an engine. And I went through the drill, identify dead foot, dead engine, verify, pull the right throttle back. Yep, you're not pulling the back one down. Feather, secure the engine. And he said, wrong, do it again. What the heck? And I did it. I did it, and he made me do it 3 times, and I couldn't understand what I was doing wrong. And finally he said, he brought the plane back into 2 engines operational. And he said every time you touched the propeller control, you would touch it, you would say feather the engine, but I didn't do it. I was going through the motions, but I wasn't actually doing that thing. And it was just a stupid dumb out in my position, on my part, but I did exactly what this pilot did. I'm looking at other stuff. I'm saying, and I feather the engine, just like he said, 4 forward, 4 blue for water. He was going through the right motions, but he wasn't verifying by actually looking, stopping what he was doing, and seeing that he actually did that right thing. So that's something that you can work on. Now, after I'm really glad I did that when I was with that instructor, because ever since then, that was burned into my mind that I don't just go through the motions. I actually will stop and verify what I'm doing. I use it mostly for ensuring that my gear is down. I don't just say gear down or touch the handle or something. I really look. I mean, I'm so paranoid whenever I'm flying a retractable plane aircraft or retractable gear aircraft that I actually look at that handle and look and say, yes, I've got 3 green lights, or in my Queen Air, 3 tires in the window. But it's so easy to not do that. It's so easy to get comfortable with the airplane. That's one of my biggest problems is complacency. I fly every day. When I'm flying the Caravan, flying jumpers, or in the 182, I'm up and down. I think Saturday I did 16 loads. Yesterday I did 10. Today I did 6. And it's really easy to get distracted and get complacent and, looking at your setup, trying to get your perfect setup, trying to get, do a really nice landing, make sure your speed is on, and you just kind of can skip some things. Happened to me once. When I was getting checked out in the Caravan, I was with one of the most experienced jump pilots in the world. He probably had 12,000 hours at the time, many years of flying jumpers. I probably had 7,000 hours at the time, many years flying jumpers, first day flying the Caravan. And I was set up for landing, and everything was fine. He goes, okay, I was a little far and outside. It's easy to do in the Caravan because when you're flying it on disc, there's a ton of drag, and it's really easy to undershoot. You come in so steep and tight and fast, it looks like you're going to overshoot the runway, and actually you're short. And so he took I was getting set up for landing, and he goes, I was on final, but, still 1,000 feet in the air at a pretty steep angle. He goes, let me have it for a second. He showed me something, how to dive down and pick up some speed, maybe, and add a little power. And he goes, yeah, do it like that. And I took the plane back. Now I'm on short final, at a point where I would have already put the flaps down. I usually put the flaps down 1,000 feet AGL over, on final. And I hadn't done that. And I'm coming into land and start the flare, and something felt just wrong. And luckily, I just elected to immediately go around. That's what he really hammered into me when you're learning how to fly the Supervan. If something feels wrong, just go around. And with that Garrett, it's a direct drive engine, not like a Pratt & Whitney. Pratt & Whitney, you push the throttle forward, it takes some time to spool up. Pratt & Whitney, push then wait. With the Garrett, immediate power. We shot up into the air immediately. I did a go around. It's like instantaneous, which is what I love about the Garrett. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, oh my God, I didn't have the flaps down. Neither of us caught it, which is also something of a danger when you have two really experienced pilots flying together. Often they kind of have a little confirmational bias between them that think he's got it. We're both so experienced, we're not going to make any mistakes. And yeah, we made that mistake. And it's a really good thing I did, because in the super van with that Garrett flying on disc, if you don't have the flaps down and you go into land, that thing stops flying immediately and smashes into the ground. That just happened last year at a drop zone. A pilot had just gotten checked out to fly solo, probably only had 50 hours in the airplane, and she came in, forgot the flaps, pancaked it on the ground, spread the gear, bounced up in the air. Everybody said she did a fabulous job on not losing control of the airplane and doing the second crash. She was empty, which is how you usually are when you're landing a skydiving plane. But buckled the nose gear, just didn't total the airplane. I think they finally got it back going just in the last few weeks, but it did hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of damage. So I'm always really paranoid about the flaps. So I'll never forget that again. Oh wait, yes I will. I did it yesterday. I got distracted again. I'm coming in, load number 6 or 7 for the day. I'm setting up on final. I'm probably about 500 or 600 feet shy of 2,000 feet or 1,000 AGL when I normally put the flaps down. Look up, there's some skydivers landing close to the runway. I'm kind of watching, are you going to get out of my way? Do I have to do a go around? Nope, they cleared it. Everything's fine. I'm coming on in. Now I'm past my 1,000-foot mark where I normally would have put the flaps down. And then it was like, okay, let's double check. Oh, geez, I didn't put the flaps down. So it can still happen. Now, I know you're probably saying, hey, if you had, use your checklist. Well, we don't use checklists in the skydiving planes, especially on landing. You can't. You're coming down way too fast. Everything's happening. A lot of times you'll see me, I've got both hands on the yoke because it's a heavy airplane and you're really driving that thing to the ground. I'll put my hand on the throttle if I need to. I usually put my hand on the throttle as I'm flaring just in case. But it happened again, and that's a problem. And I've really got to get myself down. I was trying to be really careful, 2,000 feet. 8 MSL. My drop zone's at 1,000 feet approximately. Gear down or flaps down every time. I do the GUMPS check. But if you're going to do that GUMPS check, you actually have to do it. You can't just say it. And if you've been flying for a while, it's easy to get distracted. Just like this Fireboss pilot. He's probably, you don't get into the Fireboss. This wasn't his first day. You're trying to set up, you're watching the other airplane, you're doing a lot of stuff. All right, gas undercarriage, mixture props, four blue for water. But he didn't actually look at the lights and take time to register it. So that's what happened. All right, well, that's all I've got for now. Try to work on that if you think you're getting complacent. This is a problem that student pilots don't normally have because they're so paranoid. They double and triple check everything. Real experienced pilots, we're susceptible. We get complacent. We get, have that confirmation bias. I'm on short final. Everything must be correct, right? Well, not all the time. All right, that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching. And as always, don't forget to keep your speed up and put your gear down.